Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kayleigh Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur podcast. And I'm joined today by the fabulous Lisa Rhodes, who is a short-term rental brand and business growth strategist. And today we are going to be diving into the concept of fear, which I'm really excited to talk about and to bring to the podcast. Lisa, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Kayleigh. I've been really looking forward to chatting to you.
Oh, I'm so excited to dive in a little bit into your own journey as well. So before we start talking about all things fear, which I think this is going to be a really juicy episode, are you able to give our listeners a little bit of an introduction to you and your journey so far?
Yes, I describe myself as an accidental entrepreneur, as I think so many people do. I have a background in a very typical corporate career in my past. And to cut a very long story short, redundancy was the kick up the backside that took me into self-employment. I got fed up with being treated not particularly well. And so I went into, my first business was a marketing agency, specializing in the tech space, with a business partner. And then I think getting into property, I'd always been in property since I was in my early 20s. So I'd always been a property investor. And one property investment that I did in Cyprus opened up an opportunity to start a short-term rental, full facilities management, property management business in Cyprus, which I operated for 20 years until I sold it in 2021. And since then, I've been a short-term rental business brand and growth strategist and educator in our sector.
Wow. Amazing. What a journey as well. Thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to be diving into this whole concept of fear today. And like I said, I'm very excited to be touching on this topic with you and diving into some of your own experiences, as well as some advice that you potentially can give our listeners. But let's just kind of get to terms of exactly what fear actually looks like. So I think so many people fear failure or fear judgment from others. There's lots of different types of fear. How would you define fear to our listeners today?
I think fear can be that thing that stops you from moving forward. It can stop you from making, decisions in your business that can be good or bad. Fear can be procrastination. I mean, I know I suffer from perfectionist procrastination, and it's not fear so much, it's just that kind of unsure about which way to go sometimes. I think fear can be quite debilitating, and I think it can really hold us back really from sometimes being the best of ourselves. Actually, we don't show the best of ourselves because we fear sometimes showing who that person really is.
Absolutely. And is there any time, if we kind of go back to your beginning journey as an entrepreneur, let's kind of start from the beginning, from that sense, what fears did you face at that very beginning stages of growing your business, and how did you handle any challenges that came up?
I was always really fearful about running the finances of a business. I'd never run a business before. When I went into becoming my first self-employment position with my business partner, Michelle, at the time, she was very clearly, it was a marketing agency. She had a really strong marketing background and I didn't. I'd kind of fallen into it. I was a very much head of international partnerships. I had quite a commercial background. But running the finances of a company, I took a huge amount of fear from getting it right. I was so worried about the HMRC chasing after us as, not getting our accounts right. So that really was the first thing I had to overcome was don't fear money, don't fear the account side of a business, go and get some advice, learn about it. And that's what I did. I mean, pretty much that's what I did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can completely resonate with that as well. I think everyone, and I've had so many conversations with my own clients as well, where that is something that people do fear, the accounts, the finance side of things. But regardless of whatever your fears are in business, I would always say, and I agree with you there, go and ask for some support to the people that can support you or help you in those areas, because there are always people out there to help you and guide you. And there are always going to be people that have done what you are doing to an extent, obviously, in the entrepreneurial journey. So absolutely, I definitely agree with that. Was there anything that you experienced in your journey that kind of, in terms of the fear of failure, for example, was anything around those lines that sort of impacted the decisions that you made in your business?
Well, I mean, as I grew my business in Cyprus, which I said was a kind of an opportunity that presented itself purely because I was a property investor and I was new into a very early emerging market. So bear in mind, I was operating this business from the UK in another country. So for me, there was the fear of, how is my business going to be received by my competitors on the ground? I wasn't on the ground. They knew that. They knew I was operating it from the UK. There was that kind of fear of people trashing your business name. There was a lot of that going on, people trying to sort of dismiss who you were, and that you shouldn't be there for some reason. And I kind of thought, well, I've got every right to be here, so long as I do a good job, so long as I look after our clients, so long as I'm clear about what we're doing, I have every right to be in this market. So I had to overcome that. Actually, that was a mindset issue for me, which was, I have a right to be here. Everybody who is in business has a right to be there. You've just got to make sure that people know who you are, what you're doing, and I think one of your early episodes was building that trust in the market, trust in your clients, and that kind of it sort of resolved. Actually, as I felt people were trusting me, people were giving us business, so I overcame that initial fear of, should I be here? Should I be doing this? What am I doing? Where am I going? All of those things. I think a lot of new business owners face those worries and those fears. I have that conversation quite regularly with clients.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting you say that, because the comparison theory, as I say, so many people are worried, aren't they? And like you said, there's the fear around, do I actually, am I worthy of being here? And, in a room full of these incredible people. And I think a lot of people do fall into that kind of trap of the comparison theory, and, not feeling worthy of who they are and actually why they're there. Is there any advice that you would give those people that are potentially kind of worrying about other people and compare themselves to others who are potentially further along the lines than they are?
Well, it's interesting because, this is my third business. So in each of those businesses, there's been that kind of that early growth stage worries. Where are we going? What are we doing? When I had a business partner, I don't think I felt it quite so much. We hit the ground running. That business did really well very quickly. We must have hit, and in my second business, I hit the ground and it grew grew very quickly. This business, interesting, although I've been in business 3 times and I've been in, a long time now, I've been in this industry over 20 years. Even as I hit the market as a consultant, I had that fear of being visible. Who am I? What have I got to say? There's a lot of men in my sector. There's very little women. There's very few women that stand up and speak like I do. And I want to change that. And in order to change that, I had to overcome that. Like, why are they going to listen to me? Nobody knew I'd been in the sector for 20 years because I've been quietly doing my business in Cyprus. I hadn't been standing on a stage in London as I do now. I had been like in the background. So I had to overcome that, like that fear of being seen now as a consultant in my sector. And I would say you have to put yourself out there. You really do. You can't hide. You can't be the best secret in your business because people won't know who you are. You have to overcome that fear of being seen and being heard. I don't know anybody likes hearing themselves on video, or particularly, I mean, there are some people who really like being on video, but I don't know many people who like it. But I had to really overcome that, because in this space now, you have to be seen, you have to be heard, you have to have a voice. And I think until we start finding our voice, we might always have that little thing in the back of our heads going, I'm not good enough. What have I got to say? Who's going to want to hear me? Interestingly, when you do start speaking to people and you do tell them your experience and you do tell them from your heart, your passion of what you're doing, it comes across as you're being authentic, you're genuine, and people buy from people who care. And people can't buy from you if they don't know who you are. So you have to overcome that. I think that'll be my best piece of advice, is just get yourself out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The visibility piece is so, so important. But I love what you said there as well about authenticity and showing up and sharing your own opinion, believing in your own values and being able to share your own message with your audience. I know that this is something that I used to struggle with quite a lot in the early days, because again, I was worried about judgment and worried about where I would stand, or where I would fit, should I say, in the entrepreneurial kind of space, especially the coaching space. And it's a really interesting thing that you say, because I do think that a lot of people hide behind masks, or potentially they follow trends because they feel that that is what they need to do in order to be successful. But I don't think you can be further from the truth, or that could be further from the truth, can it? I just think you have to be unique. You have to stand out and be
Yep.
unique by being you.
Yep.
Don't change yourself.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example of that, a really good example. So I've just come back from Portugal, where I went to the Vacation Rental World Summit. It's the first time I'd been. 600 people in a very huge room.
Yeah.
And I deliberately wore the brightest dress I could find in my wardrobe, quite deliberately. I mean, as you see, I don't hide from color, right? In that room, I stood out because I was wearing the brightest dress in the room. So many people come up and spoke to me. It's just a simple thing like that, you know. Don't be afraid to let people see who you are, and just chat to people like you would. And it's interesting, because I was at a conference last week, and I spoke to two very successful business ladies in my sector. They took over a family business, but they don't have anything about them on their website. There's nothing about who they are, why they took over the business from their mum, why their mum started the business. And I think that's really important. People need to know who you are. It's not about, we do this, we offer this service, I'm a this. I think it's, you know, I say, you know, I'm Lisa Rhodes, and I'm massively passionate about the hospitality space. And I know that my clients worked with me because I looked after them, and people buy from people who care. And they stayed with me for like 20 years. And I was so very grateful for that. But they don't stay with you if you don't look after them, do they? So I think you have to, like, you need people to communicate. You need people to see who you are, what your business is about, who is the person behind the business. And I think a lot of people hide behind this is what we do, rather than this is who I am.
Absolutely. And I know that some people struggle potentially as well with sharing more about their own story, their own background. And I've had multiple conversations with, you know, my own clients and community on this. What's your perspective on this in terms of someone sharing their own stories? We've already said that it's so important for people to know who we are. But what if someone's sort of holding back a little bit about sharing their journey or their story? Again, depends obviously on their industry, but what's your perspective on that?
I think it's about being relatable. And I think, you know, I've never shied away from saying, you know, I didn't go to university. My parents couldn't afford to send me to university. I was one of very few people in my education that didn't go to university. And for a long time that held me back. And I was like, I'm not like everybody else, I haven't got a degree. Then I thought, you know what, if I let that stop me from getting anywhere, I'm just not going to go anyway. You know, I don't think so. I had to overcome that mindset thing that not having a degree was going to hold me back. In fact, when I look at my people that I went to school with, I have probably exceeded most of them in my career without a degree. So I would say there are things that we allow to hold us back, but we shouldn't. And I think we should share some of our what happened to us, because it might be the most relatable thing that someone you want to work with relates to. You know, for me, I work with a lot of women in my sector, and I see a lot of women not wanting to be visible, not really kind of wanting to, they don't know where to go for help. And that's why I'm here. Because I realized that when I started my business in this sector, there wasn't coaching in it, there wasn't masterminds in it, there wasn't the support that there should be. There's education now, but you know, this is the reason I'm just about to launch a very specific mastermind in my sector, because it doesn't exist, and I want women in my sector to do well.
Yeah. Amazing. So really being open, being able to share their story, being relatable, all real key parts here, especially if any of you that are listening are kind of fearing sharing a little bit more about you, do it anyway, do it, share it, be able to be open, because they are the key elements of how people can connect with you. So
Yeah.
Lisa, I think something that would be really interesting to talk a bit more about business development and growth, and kind of the fear of that aspect of it as well. Because I know there are many listeners to this podcast that have already got a sustainable business, who are in the process of then scaling their business. What advice could you give business owners who might feel a little bit overwhelmed by the fear of taking their business to that next level? Because I think once you've got, you know, the foundations and everything's in place and things are ticking along quite nicely, you're in a position where you want to scale. But then I think people then start to fear that next level of potentially recruiting a team or reinvesting more into their business. What kind of advice would you give around that?
So the word scale is an interesting word, and it was a conversation interest that came up in a lot of the round table discussions in Portugal, actually. What does scaling actually mean? And everybody assumes scaling means getting much bigger. The word scale is getting bigger, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think scaling today can also mean consolidation. It can also mean different things to different people. Like, what does scaling for your business actually mean for you? Because it may not be what it means to somebody else. So, I know in my industry, there are scaling companies that want thousands and thousands of thousands of properties on their books. That scaling, they're looking to be bought by a competitor at some point. But scaling to me can also mean, being very niche in your market and being very specific and targeted about who you want to work with, and consolidating your profitability, making sure your business is as healthy and profitable, robust, resilient, all those good things I think are so important today in any business. It doesn't matter what sector you're in, it's tough out there.
Yeah.
So scaling to me is about really knowing why you want to scale, what you need to scale, what does that look like? But it also could mean, as you said, bringing on people into your business, which is the next tricky thing that I found really difficult, because this is your baby. And who are these people that you can entrust with your baby? How do you pass that knowledge on? It's all in your head, that, your passion is in your heart, your knowledge is in your head. How do you pass that on to other people? So I think I said to you when we talked about doing this interview, I've always taken the view, and I took it out of a leaf out of Richard Branson's book, which is Recruit for Aptitude and Train for Skill. So when I started looking at bringing people into my business, it was very much about, I wanted to know what they were passionate about. Were they service focused? Were they people focused? Did they have good communication skills? Did they demonstrate to me that they really cared and that they would go the extra mile? Because in hospitality, that's really important. And I didn't really care that they didn't come from my sector, or they'd never run a property management business, or I didn't care about that, because if they came with the right attitude, I knew that they would want to do the best thing by our clients. And we all know in our business, if your team take care of your clients, it will take care of your business.
Amazing. And I know that, again, through conversations I've had with my own clients, that kind of fear of recruiting is, you've touched on that, and it's a really interesting topic. And when it comes to even things like delegation, for example, delegating tasks to team members, this has always been something that I've struggled with. I'm very much a control freak, love to control everything myself, love to know exactly what is happening. And I definitely would say it's the weakness of mine. But again, how do you let go as a CEO or as a business owner? You recruit, and say, for example, you found some people that you can definitely see fitting into your company, into your business. How do you then let go of this fear of delegation?
Well, I didn't have any choice. If you think my business was in another country, I didn't have a choice. I could not do it all myself. And I think the biggest hurdle that I overcame, which was the biggest thing that had the most impact on my business growth and profitability, was the day I understood that if I recruited the right people, they may not go about things in exactly the same way as I did it. But if we were working towards a common goal and we achieved those, by having those people on board, my business rocketed. If I didn't have those people on board, I limited the growth of my business, because I could not do it all. I couldn't wear 20 hats in one day. I couldn't manage all these client relationships. I couldn't grow. So scaling was absolutely pivotal on having people in my business.
Amazing. And are there any strategies that you have found useful in managing fear of uncertainty, especially through that rapid growth in your business?
Having a good sounding board and having a good coach and mentor that I could turn to when I was really struggling, because I think it is a very lonely place. We know that, don't we? As entrepreneurs, as business owners, we know there are times when we're like, and I can remember so many conversations. I'm walking around and my husband's going, it will sort itself out. It will be okay. And I'm like, I know, but right now it feels so out of control, like you, so out of control, so out of my depth. What am I doing? How am I going to overcome this next challenge? Because let's be honest, if one challenge goes, another curveball will come down the road, right behind it. So somebody said to me, in business, the days when there isn't a curveball will be be the norm, because in business growth there will be lots of curveballs, and we just have to acknowledge that. But I think having the right sounding board around you, someone you trust, a mentor, a coach that you could go to say, I've not dealt with this situation before. I don't feel like I can go and talk to my team about it. Like the decision to sell, for example, or the decision to do something that could impact on them. But you do need a good sounding board. And I think a good mentor is probably a good place to go.
Absolutely. Having that support, having that accountability, having someone to just reach out to, I would always. And I think everyone, so many people will say everyone needs a coach or everyone needs a mentor. And I do believe that it's true, and I think when you out of the corporate world or the public sector and into entrepreneurship, or even if you've been an entrepreneur, sorry, all of your working life, which is incredible. But I think it's very, very different than being employed. It's very different than
Absolutely is.
having a team,
Yep.
a boss
Yep.
above you or a team below or whoever. I think it's just really important to have that support from someone,
Yeah.
isn't it? To be
Yeah.
able to support you.
And I think also, Kayleigh, it's a bit like this, the analogy of when you become a parent, if you've never been a parent before, it's all new, right? When you become an entrepreneur, it's the same thing. It's, you don't know what you don't know. And I think entrepreneurs are very hard on themselves and they think they should know everything, and they don't. And you can't possibly scale. I mean, the best people in business will recruit people better than them, because they know that there'll be a limit to their own skills, and they know that they will limit the growth of their business if they don't bring other people into the business that are better than them at something. So as your business grows, your departments will get bigger, your teams will get bigger. You can't possibly manage all that. That's what CEO's role is. You're the umbrella view of where the business is going. The people that you employ in your business, the people that will do the day-to-day things that you no longer do. And I think that's where your growth as an entrepreneur is. You may start as I'm the managing director or the CEO of my business. What does that actually mean? It means that you're going to have to grow into a role at some point in the future. It means you are going to manage lots and lots of people potentially if you're going to grow a very big business. So you have to, there's got to be a big growth journey for you too, hasn't there?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it is a journey, a journey in itself, from start to, I say to finish, but everyone's on a journey and everyone's looking to kind of grow. And we're always having to, to come across different fears and different challenges and overcome these and actually push and move forwards. And having that support is obviously really important as well. How is overcoming fears in your own experience then, and potentially even fear of failure at some point in your journey, how has that shaped your business journey, and what lessons have you learned along the way?
It's really interesting because I think a lot of people look at me and think that I'm so very confident that I've never had any fears. And I'm just as human as an expert. I fear getting it wrong. I'm a perfectionist. I like things to be like you. I have in the past been more of a control freak over stuff than I became. I sort of grew into the fact that I couldn't control everything all of the time. And I think when you feel fear, I think sometimes you have to sit with it, and not knee jerk to it. Like, it's a natural feeling. It can sometimes, you can use it quite positively actually by going, this is telling me something. What do I need to listen to what it's telling me? And not necessarily feel like you immediately have to do something as a knee-jerk reaction to it. I think that shaped me as a business owner quite a lot. That, in the past I'd have been absolutely terrified. I've had awful situations happen in my business. I've had massive court cases. I've had earthquakes that impacted the whole of the island. I've had all sorts of stuff. They all put the fear of God in me at the time. But what I realized is I had a massively good team around me. And together, see, this is the thing, you're not always on your own. Together, you are stronger. Together, you will get through these things. So fear is that feeling of doing it all on your own. When you pull together the right team around you, you're not on your own anymore. If you have a support system, you're not on your own. So I think that's the thing I've learned is I was so massively independent when I was younger. Like, I'm going to do this all on my own. Now I realize I am stronger for having people around me, that I don't feel I'm having to do it all on my own.
Brilliant. So any advice for our listeners there, or based on what you've said, is, again, even if you're not in a position to have a team,
Yeah.
have a mentor, have some accountability
Yeah.
buddies, have someone to be able to support you and help you and be your biggest
Yeah.
cheerleader, but also your sounding
Yeah.
board, as you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier.
because I think sometimes you're so close to it, you can't always see, as you say, the wood for the trees. You can't. You're so, like, if something really does throw you, and we've all got our own things that trigger us in terms of our fear or our worries or whatever it is. But when you have that moment, if you acknowledge it and you have got somebody you can turn to, a safe space to go and have those conversations, because we all think this is a really stupid question. Why should I go and ask it? Or you're embarrassed to ask the question. What I've realized over the years, even now when I'm speaking, there is no such thing as a stupid question in business. Don't fear asking it, because the fear of asking it could hold you back. So go and ask somebody that question, and they might go, actually, it's not a silly question. Actually, lots of people ask that question. And, and then you get an answer that you might have sat there thinking and worrying about it for way too long, and that will hold you back.
Amazing. I love that as well, in terms of there's not a silly question. No question is a silly question. If you have a question, go and ask those people who can support you. Absolutely. What would be your final piece of advice for our listeners in terms of the fear, any fear in their business?
I would say fear is natural. If you weren't growing and you weren't becoming uncomfortable, then that, you know, if you don't feel that fear, and I wouldn't say feel the fear and do it anyway, I'd say feel the fear and think about why you're doing it. So feel it, it's natural, but think about what your steps are, think about what you might need. Don't necessarily rush and knee jerk into making a decision. Sometimes you have to sit with it for a little while until you find the right solution. I know I had to do that many times, like, you know, really many times I had to dig deep. You know, when people suddenly disappear out of your business, you go, oh my God. But actually, it's okay. Actually, most things sort themselves out, I would say. Most things will resolve themselves. You've just got to give it a little bit of time, a little bit of thought, get the right support, and then move forward. That would be my best advice, really.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode, Lisa. Honestly, I really appreciate it. And I think it's such an important topic to think about, to talk about. And as you've said, obviously have your team, have your support around you. If you can't have a team, there will always be people. Make sure you reach out to your coaches, your mentors, whoever you've got there to support you. Really, really important. Before we finish, I always ask every guest onto my podcast this particular question. What word do you have for this year and why?
Well, I think I mentioned it all. My word this year is consolidate. I think don't go and grow without thinking about why you're growing, or don't go and do something until you consolidate what you've got. It's too easy to create another offer, another service, another shiny thing when you may already have what you need right in front of you. So focus, consolidate would be my things I would talk about this year.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. And where can our listeners come and find you and connect with you, Lisa?
So I am on LinkedIn under Lisa Rhodes, the Holiday Property Coach. I am on Facebook I've got a private Facebook group for anybody who's in the industry, which is Holiday Letting 101 Support and Success. But you can also find me the Holiday Property Coach. I'm also on Instagram as the Holiday Property Coach. And I'd love to connect anybody who is in my sector, who may have a property business or is thinking about having a short-term holiday property business. Very happy to have a chat and offer any support I can.
Amazing. Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for coming on as our guest. And definitely for our listeners, go and give Lisa a follow, go and connect with her. She's incredible at what she does. And as she's also offered as well, if you need or want any support, then absolutely reach out to her. Thank you so much, my lovely.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely.
And thank you so much to everyone that's tuned into today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And I will see you all again next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur Podcast with me, your host, Kayleigh Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow, and scale your dream six-figure or multi-six-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.